Hello, so my name is Kate Allgood, and I'm the founder of Quantum Performance. And today what I wanted to talk about is perfectionism. I spend a lot of my videos looking at mental toughness, as well as looking at characteristics such as confidence, motivation, focus, refocus, how to develop them, how to use them to improve athletic performance. One of the things that often comes along with people who are high achievers is a characteristic of perfectionism. And a lot of the research out there shows perfectionism as a negative characteristic trait because it often can get in the way of things such as mental toughness, motivation, confidence, focus, and refocus. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about what perfectionism is, the negative side to it, but also there is some research that's starting to slowly show that it can be a positive thing if it is utilized in the right way and kind of managed appropriately, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. So what is perfectionism? Perfectionism is a state or a characteristic that leads someone to have kind of the mindset of setting goals that a lot of the time are not realistic. They're well above what they probably are capable of achieving. Or if they do set goals that they are capable of achieving, what ends up happening is they set the goal, they reach the goal, and then once they've reached the goal, they kind of in their mind don't acknowledge it, and they kind of push it to the side, and they say that it was an insufficient goal, it wasn't hard enough. So by doing so, either what's happening is when you set a goal that is not achievable, or you set a goal that you can achieve and do achieve it, but then say, well, that wasn't hard enough, so I need to set a harder goal, that doesn't count, you're never really actually achieving anything. And that can really have a great negative impact on confidence, especially because confidence requires us to have small successes, to achieve things in everyday life. And if we're not able to build that confidence. So that's really what perfectionism is this inability to really acknowledge our successes, to set proper goals, as well as a lot of the time when we are a perfectionist, we are driven motivationally wise by a fear of failure, a fear of what other people are thinking of us, rather than striving towards something. And that's really also an important part of being able to be successful, is really looking at trying to strive towards something rather than moving away from something based off of fear. And fear is a great, or not going to say great, it's a very strong motivation. And it's why people who have perfectionism as a characteristic trait are very successful, because they have such a strong level of motivation that is based off of that fear. But what it also then ends up leading to is burnout, sometimes body image issues, and a lot of anxiety. And so that anxiety, body image issues, as well as other things, can really have just a negative impact on the person. They really are drained, they're not happy, they're not their normal self, and that obviously are kind of some of the negative aspects to perfectionism. So people who have perfectionism as a trait and have learned to manage it, to manage that characteristic, to manage the thoughts that come along with it, or the urges or the behaviors, what they're able to do is they're able to strive for high achievement, but they're really able to be okay with mistakes. They're okay with not being perfect, with being able to not look at the mistake as a personal thing but a situational thing, to look at the mistake in almost a problem-solving manner, to piece it apart and find out what could they have done better and differently, and to move from that mistake. They're really good at setting small goals and to create kind of stepping stones to that bigger success, and to be able to start to take in a little bit of those smaller successes that they may have. They're also able to start to maybe transition a little bit about moving away from being motivated by fear to being motivated by striving to achieve something. So what it becomes is it's moving more towards looking at excellence or the process of reaching something rather than the end result. And that is a big difference between those who are able to manage their perfectionistic tendencies and those who can't. They're able to strive for something, really focus in on that excellence and process-based part of the path to succeeding. So you might be asking yourself, how do you take your perfectionistic tendencies, if you do have them, and making them and moving them into a positive thing. So here's a couple things that you can do. One is really figure out who you are. So a lot of the time when we don't know who we are, away from the things that we are doing, our identity gets very much wrapped into the things that we are doing, and it becomes a lot of the time for other people or how we look to other people. And when we really figure out who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing something, it's easier to strive for something because of ourselves and not because of something else. As I mentioned earlier, perfectionism is associated with that worry and fear of what others are thinking, of failure, of making mistakes. And those things really accompany our identity being attached to something and worrying about what other people are thinking of us, rather than us really knowing who we are and what we're trying to achieve. Second thing is making and developing strategies to move beyond mistakes. So perfectionists are really, really hard on themselves for making mistakes. And so we need to find strategies in place to move beyond it. And that's really important because we are going to make mistakes. When we have strategies in place for how we are going to deal with those mistakes, for how we are going to refocus, it's easier to do so. When we don't, we can really get caught up in our emotions in that moment, and then it makes the situation that much worse. And so no longer the mistake is the issue, but it's our reaction to the mistake that really is the issue. Mistakes are going to happen. Coaches know mistakes are going to happen. Your fellow teammates know mistakes are going to happen. So we're not perfect. We are going to make mistakes, and it's usually the reaction to that mistake that becomes the problem, not necessarily the mistake itself. So when you have a plan in place, you have a go-to in that moment as a plan B to implement in case something happens. And that really is very important. Those people who plan for mistakes or unexpected things have a lot easier time refocusing, moving on from that mistake, than those who do not. A last tip is finding ways to be motivated internally. And this can be challenging because usually what does happen when someone is very gifted or good at a sport, when they're young, they are motivated internally. They're motivated for the love of the sport, for the desire just to constantly get better. They love the challenges and they love seeing themselves get better. With time, and as time progresses, a lot of the time that motivation gets flipped to the external, and that's done through people just giving someone praise, saying, "Man, you're really good," or winning awards or trophies or being offered scholarships. And so when these things start to happen, that motivation can easily get flipped to someone being motivated because of external things, for what people are saying to them, to the awards and the money, and other things of that nature. So it's very, very important to always hold on to and to remain tapped into that internal motivation, to that reason you started doing something in the first place, and to really be doing it for you, not for somebody else, not for praise, not for the accolades, but because you love the challenge, you love seeing yourself getting better, and you're motivated by that journey and that process, and motivated for yourself and no one else. So those are just a few tips on how to maybe look to start to, if you are a perfectionist, move it from really impacting you maybe in a negative way and starting to use it in a positive way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I actually do have a chapter in my book, Fortitude, the essential guide to building and sustaining mental toughness, that is all on perfectionism and how to develop it. So if you're interested in finding out more about it, then I would definitely highly recommend you pick up this book. It's available on Amazon. I'll see you guys soon in the next video.